And his Tone to Shields. He first hour down, man. How we doing? You all right? In for D-Gun? Oh, a cardinal sin. Look what Tone did. He's muted. He is
God, no!
Listen, all the heat that you give Gunner for always being mute. Oh, and he's been good lately in his defense. You did it, man. You did it.
Oh my God.
He will be hearing about this. I guarantee it. Someone will.
Hey, listen. Here, cut me a little bit of slack. I'm not just hosting. I'm producing at the same time. Cut me just a little bit of slack.
I'll cut it. But Derek won't cut you any slack. I can promise you that.
Oh my God. I hope he didn't catch this.
Oh, you're gonna hear this one. If
I
he's
really
watching,
hope he didn't catch
you are in trouble, my friend.
Oh my goodness.
All right.
But what I said was, I'm loving it. It's tremendous. I'm enjoying myself right now. Scott was great as well, providing so much insight on the Phillies, man. You know, I was telling you off air.
Yeah.
You know, when it comes to the teams I follow, it's Eagles first, Sixers, then Phillies.
Right.
You know, so I handled that a lot better than I thought I would.
Good, man. You did real good. I love it.
So yeah, I appreciate you for throwing the oop and allowing me to lay it up a little bit.
Of course, great job.
Definitely.
All right, so let's set our sights on the birds here, right? And we get to this point where it's 11 days out, and you're itching. They haven't played competitive football in what's it been? It's 5 months now since the Super Bowl, 6 months, somewhere in that range. Crazy, right? So as we're getting close here, I was last night. I'm looking at the schedule, and I was going through certain parts of it. We've done this from time to time, but I figured, it'd be a fun day for us to kind of dig in, get your opinion on where things stand. And at the end of this thing, we'll tally it all up, and we'll see where we both are with the wins and the losses. So let's start with this, Tone. And before we get to each game and all that, tell me where you fall on this. I think this New England game is more trouble than people are making it out to be. Yeah, I don't think they're great by any stretch, but it's the home season opener for them at their place. They are honoring Brady, and I get it. Brady's not walking through that tunnel and playing for them, but it's going to be emotional, and Belichick with time to prepare. I think I think it's a tough game that the Eagles win in almost an escape fashion more than just they handle them. So how do you fall? Where do you fall?
Yeah, I kind of fall in that same vein. I really compare it to that Detroit game last year. I think the Patriots are going to be a little bit better than what we expect. The reality is they're very well coached. Let's not get it twisted here. Bill Belichick is still the 7-time Super Bowl champion. I assume right, seven, right? I lost count after 5.
I know.
So
I'd like to lose count after.
Exactly right. I would love to lose count in Philadelphia, but nonetheless, I think Eagles fans, it's nothing wrong with being excited about your team. There's nothing wrong with understanding that we are coming off of a Super Bowl berth. Jalen Hurts just got paid. This offense still is talented. But there's a lot of questions on the defensive side of the ball that have to be answered. And again, Bill Belichick is one of those guys who knows how to make you, I don't want to say play your worst version of football, but he knows how to limit you to your weaknesses rather than your strengths. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be curious to see how Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson handle a guy that's so esteemed like Bill Belichick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am too. And you're right. It's going to be a nice little early test here for the new coordinators, to see what Johnson decide, what they have in store for these guys. Look, the thing is, as much as we talk about Belichick's got an entire offseason to prepare, well, so do the Eagles. It's not like the Eagles are all of a sudden, we're playing the Patriots. They know too. So that's good. But I'm also fascinated too, whether it was the Patriots or anybody else, to watch what new wrinkles are going to be unleashed. To see what little tweaks he puts on the offense with Jalen, to see what little tweaks decide. If we see some tendencies that he likes to do something a little bit more than Jonathan Gannon liked to do. So that's the other part that's really cool about this. Even though it's a very similar team, especially on offense, you got, 2 new guys calling the shots here on offense and defense that we haven't seen in those roles at least. So I'm excited about that also.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not one of those people who thinks that the offense is going to have this hard time adjusting to the new coordinator. Brian Johnson's been there for the Shane Steichen, conversations. He's been there the year prior to that. So it's not like Brian Johnson was some new hire. He was elevated. He's very familiar with what makes Jalen Hurts ticks. He's very familiar with the way this offense has been ran. I highly doubt he's going to totally pivot far away from what the Philadelphia Eagles have already been doing. But like you said, it'll be really interesting to see what wrinkles he provides. But I would love to see Jalen Hurts incorporate the running backs in the passing game just a little bit more. That way you can kind of take some pressure off of his legs. Again, I don't want to change his game.
No.
I don't want people to think I want to change his game. But I believe in order for him to take that next step as a quarterback, I believe that it takes more. See, I've always been of the mindset of, it's harder to exercise restraint than it is to just unleash everything you have, right?
I agree.
So it's going to be really interesting to see. And also remember this, the Eagles led the league in big plays last year.
Yep.
Which is plays over 20, which are plays 20 plus yards or more. They led the league in big plays, right? But what I want to see from this offense now, I want to see them methodically work their way down the field, nickel and dime, 5 yards there, 8 yards there, 10 yards there, 7 yards there, just methodically. And they've shown that they're capable, but this team was predicated on big plays last year. And you saw in that Super Bowl, the Chiefs, you saw the parity in the way those teams played. The Chiefs were very dink and dunk, work their way down the field methodically, right? Pick you apart. The Eagles, they were very much big play oriented in that bowl. So it's just going to be really interesting to see Jalen Hurts mature as a quarterback and begin to just take what the defense gives him more and more and just methodically work his way down the field.
Well, you want to have diversity. You want to have the ability to be able to do all those different things. Because here's the good thing about the methodical drives.
And remember, all games have a complexion. All games have their own identity. So every game is not just going to be a gun show. You got to know how to win those games that are a little ugly, and you got to dink and dunk and just get those 4 yards there, 6 yards there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, and here's the thing. The best thing about the methodical approach is when you're playing stud offenses and stud quarterbacks, you keep them off the field. You'd love to be able to do that against, Miami's going to have a good offense. I think the Jets are going to have a good offense. Minnesota, potentially. Certainly the Chiefs. Buffalo. San Francisco, depending on how the quarterback situation looks. Dallas. You want to be able to keep those teams on. Let Dak sit on the sideline, man. That to me is going to be one of the keys. You touched on something earlier. I don't think you bring DeAndre Swift in and not utilize him in some way, shape, or form in the passing game, whether that's the screen game, whether that's wheel routes, something out of the backfield, whatever. I mean, I think they're going to increase the throws to the backs this year because simply you can't ignore that talent. And Kenneth Gainwell is a very good pass catcher as well, coming out of the backfield. Look at his numbers in college. He was excellent at that. So I think you need to utilize both of those guys in that capacity. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be really interesting to see how Rashad Penny's used. It's going to be really interesting to see how DeAndre Swift's used, especially as far as the rotation goes. And I think those first few games, you're going to see them trying to sample each one of those guys to figure out who really flows with what we're trying to do. Because again, even though we know what this offense was in 2022, as your season begins to progress, you're going to start to lean more so on what you're doing very well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this team, acclimates to kind of being found out, right? The Eagles aren't going to surprise anybody anymore. You feel what I'm saying? The Jalen Hurts isn't going to surprise anyone anymore. So it's going to be really interesting to see the new wrinkle, the new complexion that this defense can take.
No question. All right, so let's look at it. Let's go through this thing. They opened it up week 1, 4:25 kickoff. That's September 10th, if you were wondering, at New England. That is the opener. Eagles, last I checked, let me look again, were 5-point favorites. Let me see if that line has moved in any way, shape, or form. It has not. Okay, so the Eagles are sitting there at 5 to open it up. I think we sort of both, mentioned this. So I'm looking at a close one, a sweat for sure. I think it could be a field goal kind of game. I do think the Eagles ultimately prevail because I think their offense is just better than the Patriots' defense. But I think this could look a lot like last year's opener where, the Eagles aren't quite on their A game yet, and the other team takes advantage of that, but they're still good enough to survive. I see a survival and a tight one. What do you see?
I'm on the same page as you. I think this is one of those games that's going to be a little ugly. It's not going to be as flashy as the Eagles fans would like it to be. They're going to be on the road. They're going up against Bill. I keep saying Brian Belichick. Bill Belichick. For some reason, Brian Billick is in my mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, Bill Belichick. They're going to have to really worry about that kind of guy. It's going to be real interesting to see what Mac Jones is coming off of that bad year he had previous year.
Yeah,
I don't
Bill
think.
O'Brien.
Yeah, exactly. He has Bill O'Brien this season. I personally don't think the Patriots did him any favors last year. I think he regressed by way of them, not by way of himself. I think Mac Jones is a fairly decent quarterback, and I feel like he would have took an even further step if he didn't have a defensive coordinator trying to play offensive coordinator last year.
Yeah.
And also on top of that, they brought in Juju Smith-Schuster. They have Devontae Parker still that they just extended. They have Hunter Henry at tight end and Mike Gesicki. They're very talented at tight end. Their defense is what we're really going to have to worry about because they have guys that know how to get to the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And those Bill Belichick defenses, they make you see one thing, but a whole other thing happens. So I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be ugly, but I think the Eagles pull it out in the end.
Okay, so we have 2 1-0s so far. That's what we have so far. All right, next game. Yeah, the challenge here is, certainly a good Vikings offense. There's no doubt. The Eagles, to their credit, did a great job last year on Justin Jefferson. Just an awesome job. But, and this applies to both teams, but it's a quick turnaround. You're going to be playing 4 days later on a Thursday night. That is the home opener at the Link against the Vikings. A Vikings team that added in the offseason Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. They also let some people go. Some longtime staples on that defensive side walked. But you still have Kirk Cousins, who puts up good regular season numbers. We know that. They still have Justin Jefferson. They still have some weapons. KJ Osborne, who's underrated. They have some nice players on that side of the ball. I think this is a game that the Eagles win. I don't know that this is as close as the previous week. In fact, I don't think it is as close. I think I'm not going to say win handily because I don't think it's a handily kind of win. Right. But I think the Eagles win this one by about a touchdown. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they win this game around, like you said, a touchdown, 10 points as well. They're going to be without Dalvin Cook. That's a big loss. Yep. Whether they want to accept it or not. That means the guy Alexander Mattison is going to have to take his game to another level. Kirk Cousins, we know he is in prime time, right? So it's kind of like we're kind of riding on that hysteria as well. Mm-hmm. But also, I think they're better at wide receiver this go around. They moved on from Adam Thielen. He was aging. He hasn't really been a factor in quite some time. But then they drafted rookie Jordan Addison. You pair him with Justin Jefferson. It's going to be really interesting to see how that thing pans out. They have KJ Osborne and they have T.J. Hockenson, who I believe he actually made my tight end list that we're going to talk about later on. Yeah. But yeah, they're talented on offense. Their issue has always been the defensive side, and I think that's just where the Philadelphia Eagles, take advantage of them. So I think the Philadelphia Eagles win that game.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's going to be a nice test to see how far along the Eagles defense is,
Absolutely.
In a big way, because last year they were prepared for them and they were able to come out on top. All right, 2-0 at this point. This part's nice. You get a big break. You get 11 days off from the Thursday night game to a Monday night game. So they're going to be very well rested for that game down there in Tampa. I don't think Tampa's good
at all.
No, I mean, the thing they do have good wide receivers. I mean, when you're rolling out Mike Evans and Godwin, you got some pretty good wideouts. So that is something that you're going to have to be there. You have to contest with. But I'm not a big believer in Baker Mayfield. I think ultimately he makes the kind of mistakes that kill you in a big spot. So I think that's going to end up, being the downfall. He'll make a couple of mistakes, a couple turnovers here and there, and the Eagles get out of there pretty comfortably. I think it's 3-0 at that point.
Yeah, now here's the thing. You mentioned those wide receivers, right? Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. My only fear, by the way, I do have them winning this game, by the way. Let me make that clear. I have them winning this game. But my only fear in that game, they have all the time off, and I don't want them to go in sleeping on Baker Mayfield because he's the kind of quarterback that can be terrible for many weeks in a row. Then all of a sudden he has that game that you don't know how he had it, but he kind of has that Ryan Fitzpatrick vibe to him. He's not that good, but he has these moments that for some reason he's just on. He's just hot. Mm-hmm. And then you actually give him reliable and tried and true weapons like a Mike Evans, like a Chris Godwin. And then on top of that, I understand the Buccaneers had a lot of injuries on that old line last year. They're going to be healthy this year. So Baker Mayfield, with time, with those weapons, you can't just sleep on it. And they have some guys. They have some talent on defense. Devin White, Levante David.
Yeah, they do. They still do.
They're still a talented team. If you put any other quarterback in that situation, we have a fight on our hands. So
yeah, I don't love their line either. I don't love their O line. I think that's a problem for Baker. And I don't think I like Todd Bowles as a D coordinator. I don't like him as a head coach.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? The Todd Bowles effect. That's going to be something to keep our eye on as well. So
absolutely.
Again, I got the Philadelphia Eagles winning that game by more than 10 points.
All right, now this is the game I wanted before we dive into the game at home against Washington on that Sunday. This is like beware. For it seems to me like it's always the struggle bus here at home against Washington for whatever reason. And last year was the same way. We'll have a better idea of what Sam Howell is at that point, how much of an effect Bieniemy's having, as the offensive coordinator. So that'll be good. You get a 3-week sample size of what they are and how they're doing things, which will help, Sean decide prepare for this thing. But this always, an NFC East game, it always seems like it's trouble for the Eagles. So I'll let you go first on this one, Tone. What do you think here?
I have us winning that game. I actually have us winning that game pretty decidedly. But I do worry about the Darius Slay-Terry McLaurin matchup. I always do.
Yep.
Because Terry McLaurin, I don't know what it is. Darius Slay just can't guard that man.
But you know what? He does that to a lot of people. He's good.
Yeah. And that's not the takeaway from Terry, right? Yeah. They call him Scary Terry for a reason.
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin, I think he's probably the second or third best receiver in the division.
Yep.
So it's going to be real interesting to see how the thing pans out. That's the thing. They're talented. That's the thing about Tampa and Washington. They're talented on both sides of the ball, but the quarterback position is the biggest question. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's going to come down to. And they're going to have Chase Young back. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Deron Payne just got paid. Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat. They drafted a corner who actually played Devontae Smith a lot in college, and he already made note that he's looking forward to that matchup against Devontae twice a year. So I think the Eagles win that game. But again, it's a division game. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be exciting. But I think the Philadelphia Eagles win that game for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a win too. I don't think it's an easy game. It's the NFC East games are rarely easy. And again, the history here at home in that game, it's generally tough. But I think one of the issues that Washington has is I don't love their linebackers or their secondary. I love their defensive line.
Right.
And I think the Eagles' offensive line will hold up well enough against Washington's defensive line and allow Jalen to do his thing and hurt them in the air. I think that this could be a game where the Eagles could hurt them in the air. All right, let's move on to game number 5. This game's at the Rams. Now, they get Stafford back. They have Cooper Kupp back. They're returning some guys, but they've also lost a lot. I don't think they're going to be a very good team in particular. I think they're a third-place team in their division. Behind the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. I think they're the 3-spot. Cardinals are the 4-spot. So that said, it's not easy to go East Coast, West Coast. That's for sure. We know that much. And it sounds like we're getting crazy here, but I'll take the Eagles to win the game.
I'm with you on that. I think this is a game where the Philadelphia Eagles simply violate their offensive line. Just violate, abuse them. The Rams' offensive line just flat out stinks.
Yep.
And I think this is one of those games where you might see Hassan Reddick with a 2-sack game. You might see Nolan Smith maybe get his first or second sack of the season. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You may see Jalen Carter go off and have his breakout game against his offensive line. Like I just feel like this game can literally be decided simply in the trenches.
Yep.
And I think the Eagles, all they have to do is just play their version of football, and they will mutilate Matthew Stafford, and he'll be forced to retire this year.
Yeah, look, pressure on him. And the thing with him is he's had so many injuries, one hit, and it, who knows what that turns into with him. Yeah. So I think it's a good spot for the Eagles. This is where I have the first loss, Stone.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
First of all, it's very hard to go 6-0 in this league. And I know that what kind of start the Eagles got off to last year. I get it. But I do think the Jets are going to be good. And I know there's a lot of preseason hype about them, and probably people are going a little too crazy. However, I think they're going to be good. This is a home game for them. Eagles are coming off a West Coast game. This sets up to me as kind of a tough spot, this 425 week 6. So I'll take the Jets here in a close one, in a frustrating kind of game. But I think Aaron Rodgers generally he didn't light them on fire last year, but he's generally had a lot of success against the Eagles over his career, and I think that comes back.
Yeah, I think the Jets win this game in the shootout. I think this is going to be one of those games where, as good as both defenses are, I think this is going to be a game where the offense, whoever has the ball last, will win this game. Aaron Rodgers, he's trying to redeem himself from that season last year. From a numbers perspective, he didn't have a bad year, but from a team perspective, they weren't really successful. But I also think there were so many things surrounding that team outside of football that lended to that bad season. But Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, Michael Carter, who I think is a pretty good running back, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Corey Davis, they're talented, right? It's going to be interesting to see how that offensive line holds up because Mekhi Becton can't stay healthy. Dwayne Brown, can he stay healthy as well? That defense is something I'm paying very close attention to. Quentin Williams, Quincy Williams, the brothers,
Yep.
Quentin and Quincy. It's Sauce Gardner, right? So this game, I believe, is going to be a shootout, but I think the Philadelphia Eagles lose this game on a field goal.
Okay. A tight one. Yep. All right. Miami here. I find this game really hard to handicap for a couple of reasons, Tony. I don't know that Tua is still going to be the quarterback at that point.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the recurring head injuries that he has, I was listening to somebody the other day who said he's bulked up. That's all well and good.
It's not about the muscle.
No,
you can't bulk up your brain. Like, Jesus. Come on, man.
Like, if he's stronger, could he maybe, elude a tackler? I don't know. Maybe. The problem is it's not just the hit to the head. It's the slam to the ground that seems to get him all the time. And look, man, I want the guy. He should do what he wants to do. But as a bystander, I worry about him, and it doesn't look good to me. I'm going to make this prediction on the game based on the fact that I don't think he's going to be playing by then.
Okay.
And I hope I'm wrong. I hope he is playing and I hope he has a full year because I don't like to see anybody get hurt, especially head injuries. I think the Eagles win the game. If Tua's playing, I think this thing's a battle on Sunday night. Like, I think this is a back and forth, pretty wild game because I think the Eagles secondary is going to have their hands full with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and that crew. I do think losing Gesicki hurts him a little bit, but I think the Eagles win a close one. Win the game if Tua's not playing. If he does play, I think it's close. I think either way, it's an Eagles win.
See, I think this is where we differ for the first time today. I think, for one, I approach this as if he's going to be fully healthy.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to legislate the injuries and predict. So I just operated off the assumption that everyone's going to be as healthy as they possibly can be. And I think about Tua, and we saw what that offense looks like when he's healthy and when he's cooking on all cylinders. And I'll be frank about this, Eagles fans. I just don't think Darius Slay nor James Bradbury can guard Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I just don't believe it. Yeah. Those guys are quite literally in their primes. Jalen Waddle entering his prime, and then you have Darius Slay who's on the back nine. You have James Bradbury who's not known for his speed. The Miami Dolphins, from a receiver perspective, they are the antithesis of what the Philadelphia Eagles are at the corner position. I just don't think the DBs can hold up against those two guys. I think it's that simple. But I do think this game is a shootout. I think the Philadelphia Eagles get in two shootouts back to back, and they lose on a field goal back to back weeks.
Okay. All right. Two straight losses for Tone. Interesting. All right, let's move on there. I got a win. You got a loss. At Washington, this is the loss. This is a loss for the Eagles. I have a bad feeling about this one. Little look ahead, coming off a really tough Miami game and looking ahead to Dallas. I think they get tripped up here. Dangerous spot here in Washington. This is an L that we probably don't have. A lot of people don't have on the schedule, but I do. I think they lose this game.
I actually think they win this game. So we actually swap week. What is that? Week 8 and week 9. Week 7 and week 8. We swapped those. I think they lose back to back Jets to Miami. Then they redeem themselves against Washington. I just think this is one of those years where they're going to sweep Washington. I understand last year it happened the way it did, but that was a very, very strange game. Very strange game. I think this year will be different. I think the Eagles win that game. So at this point, we are at week 8. I have the Eagles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have the Eagles, 6-2?
Yeah.
After beating Washington. So, yeah. So what about week 9? How do you see that Dallas matchup going?
Okay. So clearly they've had issues with Dallas, and this is a big one. You got the bye week looming on the horizon. They've had issues with Dallas over the last couple of years. In particular, they haven't done a good job on Dak Prescott. I think here's what I think ends up happening ultimately, Tone. I think they split with Dallas. And if my point of view is they split with Dallas, I think this one's the win. December 10th is just to jump ahead for 1 second. They'll be in a stretch of at Kansas City, Buffalo home, San Fran home, going to Dallas. I think that's a terrible spot for the Eagles. Agreed. So I think they lose that one, win this one, and I think they'll play well in this one. I have a good feeling about this game with the Eagles.
No, I'm with you 150%. I think they split with Dallas. I just think that's just the reality. Dallas is a good team. I know Eagles fans don't want to hear that, but they're a good team.
Yeah.
And I know another thing they don't want to hear. They're fairly well coached. Dan Quinn on defense. I know people have their own.
He's a very good defensive coordinator.
Very good. I know people have their own opinions of Mike McCarthy, but he's a good coach. Does he have boneheaded moments? Yes. But he's a good coach. And the reality is, Dak Prescott, he has the Philadelphia Eagles number for the most part. So I think the Philadelphia Eagles definitely split, like you said, not to jump too far ahead, but I think they split. I think they win week 9, and then they lose week 14, coming off that KC, Buffalo, San Fran stretch. That's going to be a killer.
Absolutely. All right, let's get a timeout in, and we'll pick it up after the bye, because that's where this thing really gets real. All right, so just a preview. As I mentioned, at Kansas City, Buffalo home, San Fran home, at Dallas, at Seattle, Giants home Cardinals, at Giants to close out the season. So when we come back, we'll go through second half. So we're both at 2 losses, correct?
Correct. I have two back-to-back losses, week 6 and week 7 at Jets and versus Miami.
Okay. So we're at 7-2 at the bye, and then it'll be Kansas City at Kansas City. So we'll do that when we come back. He's Tone DeShields. He's in for Derek. I am Rob Ellis, hanging out with you on this Friday. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Let's talk about Pro Action Restoration. Pro Action Restoration is the place that you reach out to if your home, a business that you may own, a property you own, goes through the pain, the inconvenience of water, fire, smoke, or mold damage on your property. You're not really sure who to turn to. You can't clean that up yourself. You don't have the time. You don't have the tools, the equipment to be able to do it the right way. Well, Pro Action Restoration is on call 24 hours, 7 days a week to assist. I went through it. I was at my parents' house. They got flooded on a Saturday morning. I called Pro Action. They got right over there. They diagnosed what the issue was first and foremost. They fixed it. They cleaned it up, and it was a great experience all around. They are licensed, bonded, and fully insured, and they've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. Pro Action will work in conjunction with your insurance company. So again, could be water, fire, smoke damage, mold remediation, you name it, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760, 610-623-3760, or online at proactionrestoration.com. That's proactionrestoration.com.